When I lay down at night, if I can close my eyes and tell myself, did I make the best decision for my clients with the knowledge I have today? And if that answer is yes, then you know what, I'll sleep pretty good at night. But I could not lay down and sleep if I knew that I made a decision that wasn't in my client's best interest.
Welcome to episode 158 of the Ep158 Construction Podcast. And today we have Evan Crowe, who's president and owner of CroweBuilt Homes in Atlanta. And he and I met formally in person at the CBUSA conference in Boston. So we dive into CBUSA and the benefits. So for you contractors listening, feel free to reach out. We can get you introduced to the group. More importantly, Evan spoke about QR codes and how he's utilizing QR codes for his business, for his clients, for the experience of building with his trade partners and subcontractors. And then also the Matterport, how he's used this. And again, as we think about, him as a business owner, as he grows from a one-man operation to now hiring additional people, what do you look for? How does that come into play with the mentality of abundance? And also just accounting to retention to all the things that we deal with running our business. Great contact with Evan. He's a great builder. Take a listen. Without further ado, let's get started. This past May, we had an amazing Contractor Coalition Summit. This was in Nashville with Nick Schiffer from Menace Builders and Morgan Molitor from Construction to Style out of Minnesota. And we are now up for our second round of the Contractor Coalition Summit that'll be in Huntington Beach from Sunday, November 6th through Wednesday, November 9th. Go to contractorcoalitionsummit.com, sign up, register. We have some amazing partners that'll be there sponsoring the event, amazing attendees that have already signed up. It's limited seating. We're only allowing 30 to attend. And again, this will be all things pricing, profitability, contracting, client expectations, scheduling, and of course, marketing and social media. Everything that we wish we knew in our business from the very beginning is all going to be wrapped up into just a couple of days. So we'll see you there in Huntington Beach in November. So welcome to the Ep158 Construction Podcast. I'm Brad Levitt, and we have Evan Crowe with us today. Welcome, Evan.
Hey, Brad, how's it going?
Good, man. I'm excited to have you on. So Evan is president and founder, owner of CroweBuilt Homes there in the South in Atlanta, right? So, and we met, we've known each other through social media for a while, but, one-on-one time there at the CBUSA conference in Boston, which is a contractor buying group. So I guess maybe before we start there, you said some interesting things at the conference I want to pick your brain on here. But how did you get involved with CBUSA?
Actually, we're a member of the Southern Living Custom Home Builders group as well. And one of the other members of the group just brought it up in conversation, told me about CBUSA and the opportunities there, and said, hey, man, come give it a shot. You got nothing to lose. And, at first I was a little hesitant because we're pretty loyal to our trades and vendors. And, part of the group is kind of taking advantage of the group buy with some other vendors. And so we're slowly working our way into it, but man, it's been extremely valuable for us.
So what's the difference? You said Southern Living, right? Buyer group. And so I guess what's the difference, and maybe just a little background for those listening. CBUSA, and I was introduced, so they have their chapters, right? Every area has a chapter, and they have two things. They have essentially, like collectively, CBUSA, I think they add up, 1,000 builders roughly around the country, and we have purchasing power together. So collectively, we're like number 7 in the country in comparison, like D.R. Horton and Lennar and some of these big players. And so it just allows, we have national contracts and then our local market contracts, and there's, vendor participation as suppliers so it gives us buying power, rebates, helps us with, pricing and customer satisfaction and just the whole network, right? The contractor network. But that's the quick background of CBUSA. So anyone interested, reach out. We can, introduce you to the group. But as far as Southern Living, what's that, Evan? I haven't even heard of that.
Well, Southern Living magazine is pretty big in the South. And Meredith Media, who now owns Southern Living, has, other magazines across the country. And, Southern Living, there's certain plans that go along with the Southern Living kind of theme. And we also have sponsored products, kind of like CBUSA. It's not really like a buying group or anything advantageous in regards to pricing or anything. It's more again, networking with a great group of builders. It's pretty exclusive. They invite you. Then again, we learn about products before they're released. We get to speak with a lot of other architects and designers that are in the group. We have a conference once a year, similar to what we were just at, Brad. And it's good marketing. To be honest, I can't say that I can't think of any builds offhand that have came directly from Southern Living, but it's a great group of builders, designers, architects, like I said, vendors, different products, and it's something we're proud to be a part of. Like I said, it's kind of a big deal here in the South, so we're happy to be a part of it.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I know Southern Living Magazine, which I'm familiar with, and any of those publications, maybe there not be a direct lead, at least that you're aware of. I mean, there could be, who knows, but it's just like anything, right? The marketing, I mean, being in different platforms in front of different demographics, and that's from like the different social media apps to like print media, your network, like it expands that network, all these different things that who knows, it's just that constant repetition, like to be in front of people,
Exactly.
many times on different aspects. It definitely helps the client base.
Exactly. They've got a big presence on social media. In the back of I can't remember if it's every magazine or certain issues, but in the back there's a list of builders. If you go on their website, there's a list of the builders. And they share one of your photos on Instagram, and it gets in front of a couple 100,000 people. I mean, that can make a big impact.
Yeah, it does. I love that. That's still the benefit. I mean, I still have a lot of clients that, still want that tangible product, right? The print media. So they get the mailings from, some of these different publications, and they love that. So, that's something we still can't, move everything digital. But going back to, the conference, we're sitting in Boston, I'm sitting there with you at the table, and you really sparked my interest because I'm like, Evan, we need to get you on the podcast just for this specifically. You talked about QR codes. And many of us, are familiar with QR codes, and, especially with COVID, you go to a restaurant and, their menus like take the QR code and then you pull up the digital menu. How have you applied QR codes, to the construction industry?
Well, at the conference, a lot of the guys that are building spec homes and have model homes, we're talking about having them in those homes that may show, hey, this is what paint color we used in this room, or different products in that regard. We build mostly custom homes built to suit. So the way we've been using it is for our trades on site. Brad, we may send out the construction plans, the site plan, the cabinet drawings, many of these different files we send to a project manager with one of our trade partners, but it doesn't always trickle down to the guys on site. So one way that we found to quickly and easily do so is just printing off QR codes. And, I got this idea. I was visiting with a buddy, Austin McKinney, McKinney Builders. He builds just south of Atlanta. Then he's got a killer operation. And, we pulled up to one of his jobs, and I ran over to the porta potty and I opened the door. And the first thing I see on the door is a piece of paper with all these QR codes on it. And, I come out and I'm like, hey, tell me about that. And, it's got, like I said, the plans and all these different files. And the great thing about it is, some of our construction plans, they may be 50, 60 pages, and you add in cabinet drawings, designer files, all these different files. And I mean, we're talking hundreds of pages. And if you're printing all that out, in a full set of plans, not only are we talking big dollars, but, you may be on site and one trade has it on the other end of the house, or they get wet and muddy. But just printing out a single 8.5 by 11, that's not costing you much. So it's easy to update quickly. So, I have a template. It's a PDF template. We use just a free online QR code creator. Put the QR codes on there for all the different files, print 8 or 10 copies, throw them in a plastic sleeve, and put them throughout the house. Now, your homeowners come on site. They can scan it to pull up the plans if they need to. And now there's no excuse from any trade if they can't find our superintendent on site, or if they can't get us on the phone. I mean, they've got all the files there that they need.
So let me ask you this. When you're, as you mentioned, it can be a little cumbersome, right? With some of the projects we do, especially in the custom world, between the plan set, the design book, could be landscape architect, lighting plan. I mean, so many different elements and designs and everything we're trying to integrate right into one build. So, we can upload those things digitally, like in Builder Trend, right, on the cloud, and we have the full plan set, cabinet drawings, appliance specs. When you're doing the QR code, maybe you're in a bathroom or maybe the kitchen or one of the bedrooms, does that QR code go to the entire plan set, or are you specifying it, to that area specifically? So like if I go to the QR code and maybe the primary bathroom, it's just going to pull up all the elevations, cabinetry of that bathroom. I mean, how systematic or concentrated is it just on that area of the home?
Yeah, see, we haven't got that far into it yet. This is honestly fairly new to us. Once I stole this idea from McKinney, we've been trying to implement it and figure out, figure out the best way to do so. And, I mean, we still may print out certain elevations for specific locations. And that is a great idea, Brad, to break this down even further, just see how far we can take this to really make sure, because again, to your point, if you've got 50 pages in a set of construction drawings, in all reality, sometimes our trades, I don't know if they're just being lazy or they may not know exactly what they're looking for, but sometimes they don't spend the time to find the correct page. And actually, there have been a couple instances where we have separated specific pages and created a QR code just for those pages for that detail.
Now, what's the feedback been? I mean, as far as doing the QR codes, I mean, how's that been received, from your trade partner base?
They love it, man. To say they use it, I can't say that every one of them uses it, but hey, you put your logo at the top, it's additional branding. Anytime a client walks on site, the more they see your logo, the more they see that, you care about their job. And the same with your trades. It gets a little bit more buy-in. If it looks like you're going an extra step to provide them with what they need for them to be efficient and hopefully make more money in the end, not just a quality product. That's obviously the main goal is to take care of our clients. But, our trade partners are out there trying to make $1 every day too. And, right now everybody's busy. It's hard to get the right guys on site because you've got other builders, scheduling them as well. And if they see that working for you is a little bit easier, then, they're going to prioritize you in that way.
It's interesting because at the conference, you had mentioned that, in the meeting we're in about the QR codes, and something that kind of, stuck with me is that you and I don't do like production homes. We're not, coming in and developing a community with a model home. But it was interesting. There's a lot of builders that do in our CBUSA, collective group here. And one of the builders was saying, well, what's great about the QR codes, especially as they have a model home, we all understand the production process and mindset. And what happens is, their sales agents may forget, what's standard, what's included with, the house. And so in their model homes, they're putting these QR codes all throughout the house. And so any buyer can come in, walk the house, and they can, zap that QR code on their phone and automatically see what the standards, what's included with the purchase of, the model home, and then what's upgraded. And, that just made me think, okay, that's a great application for the production world. And then with you, how you're using it, I'm like, okay, well, how can we refine that now even more for the custom side? And I'm sure like this is something I want to implement because, going to your point, it's when you visit McKinney, it's, that systems and organization, has so much impact on our ability to perform as a contractor. How has that changed for you? Because you are a small operation and, your company's changed quickly in the last, year or so.
Yeah, so we've been in business about 6 years, and it's all been me, back office, on site, all the meetings, and I just really love getting into the details. I love being on site with the guys, getting to know all the trades. Our jobs are super stressful for everyone, and so I want to be out there trying to crack some jokes, and obviously I'm checking to make sure things are done right, but just kind of boost morale a little bit, try and get a little bit more out of all the guys. But, eventually you hit that point where, you just can't do everything, and still perform at the level that you want to. So, about a year ago, I brought on, the first guy, and I guess we'll call him a project manager. I haven't done a great job of delegating responsibilities to my team. A couple months ago, we brought on another one who's kind of more in I guess you'd call him more of a superintendent role, but we've kind of divide and conquer going about things, which is it's working. We're putting out a great product that way, but it's not the most efficient use of the team. And right now, I'm just trying to get all of them as much exposure as possible to all different aspects. And I guess that was my thought process behind the divide and conquer. That way I can kind of shift them around for what I want them to see and learn. And then right now we're kind of transitioning into separate roles. Um, but yeah, growing is, and it's scary. Taking on somebody else's family and all their responsibilities. It's a lot.
Yeah, the livelihood changes everything. I mean, this is always a common question though, as a builder, especially you, Evan, where you're running the company, you're building, you're managing everything. You have this good process, and but what changes? What switches where you're like, okay, I want to grow a little bit more. I'm willing to take that risk and hire somebody. What was it that made you make that first hire?
I think it's not working on the business quite enough. I see the opportunity for some more quality work that we want to be doing. I firmly believe there's more quality jobs out there than there are quality builders. Unfortunately, there's guys that aren't putting their client first. They're putting their self and their numbers first. And I mean, yes, we're here running a business, but if you take care of your clients, it's going to come back around and take care of you. And I felt like I was missing the opportunity to spend some time in the office to get the numbers right, to be able to have somebody else taking care of some of the things on site that, hey, I'll spend 3 hours sweeping a floor, but that's not where my value is. Same with yourself. I know that you're not afraid to get in there and get dirty, but and sometimes we enjoy it. We need that little mind numbing of just sweeping sawdust all day. But getting out there and meeting with more designers and architects and showing our thought process and how we feel like we separate ourselves from some other builders. If you're on site all day, you don't have the chance to do that. And I mean, gosh, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I had to be on site directing the trade.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And so how, interview process, this is where it's really tough. How do you find talent, that fits? And you mentioned this before in the telephone game. It's just not only how it applies to you as a business owner now, Evan, is that you think of it as a general contractor. You mentioned the reason that you had the QR codes is that so, in that bidding process, in that contracting process, you're speaking with one person who's a representative of your trade partner. Well, typically the guys who are out in the field installing said product may not have downloaded all the information or all the correspondence that you had with their estimating department or the owner of that company. And so it helps that telephone game, to not lose things in translation. Well, it's no different having employees, right? To make sure, do they handle the client interaction like you would, Evan? Do they handle the trade partner communication? And so that's really difficult just to like empower and delegate. What are things you look for? How did you even hire and make that first hire?
So fortunately, the first hire, he came to me. He had been a salesman that I've worked with since the day I started my company. And he wasn't necessarily happy with the direction of what was happening with his company. And he also wanted to be on this side of things, learning to build. And, he'll eventually step out on his own and do his own thing. And he was clear from the start that that is his goal. Hopefully we can keep him happy and keep him around longer. But yeah, he mentioned to me, and at first I didn't think I was ready. I didn't think that I could take that on. And then, I mean, Brad, you know how it is. You can get 2 phone calls can change that. 2 more leads come across that are strong, and you want to take advantage of me, and you need the help. So, we stepped out on a limb and made that hire. I knew how he worked. I knew his work ethic. I knew his organization. This is a guy that I talked to multiple times a week for the past couple of years. And so I knew what I was getting and knew that I could teach him to do things how we want them done. Whether I've done that or not, we'll still see. But, getting everything that you've had in your head, all your processes, and, you've got to get those on paper. You can't expect them to do things how you want them if you're not setting them up for success. So that was our first guy, and our second guy is another guy that I've known for quite some time. He had been working for an electrical contractor for the past I think 6 years, and again somebody that I trusted, and that's the biggest thing for me. Like, is this guy going to take ownership in our company and do things like it was his own home? And that's what we got. They're both learning a lot. We're getting them exposed to as much as we can, and it's working out. Now I just got to kind of define their roles a little bit more and go from there.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm going to go back to your first hire. You made a comment about that, you had known this person, there was some trust, you knew the work ethic, which is great. They want to expand their skill set, get into the building side. What's really tough from the constant theme from, as I network with owners is like, okay, someone's really talented, but they may have the entrepreneur mindset, or they may think I'm going to go out on my own, and they're open about that, right? Because they want to be fair to you. And there are business owners that are kind of reluctant to hire someone that knows they may be there for a short term. It could be 1 year, it could be 15 years, who knows? But at some point they may want to go on their own, depending on, the company direction and market and, the culture you build. But did you have any reservation knowing, hey, I'm going to bring someone on, teach them my secrets, if you will, or like how I run my business? Were there anything that inhibited your desire to bring them on, knowing that they may potentially go out on their own and be a competitor at some point?
There probably was in the back of my head, but to be honest, I thought it was more of a positive. Somebody that's ambitious and has goals and is going to work hard towards those goals. I like that a lot more than somebody that is just going to be lackadaisical and do the minimum and is not going to be out there trying to learn. Yes, his end goal may be that he's trying to better himself, but it's going to be a great benefit to me in the process while he's trying to learn as much as he can, as quick as he can. And, again, it kind of goes back to, if he steps out and starts his own thing and is a, quality, honest builder, then great. Again, there's more quality jobs out there than there are good quality, honest builders, in my opinion. That's not to, I hate to knock anybody's hustle, but, you know how it is, Brad. You see some jobs that are done, and the client either overpaid or was told one thing and got the other, and you just hate to see that. So knowing that we got somebody that has goals and ambition, I think it's great.
I love that. And it's interesting. There was a mentor of mine, and I remember early on him saying that he always looked for competitive people. And it didn't mean that they had to be competitive at sports. Like he always looked at that too. Maybe they're really competitive at sports throughout their career, but they're competitive at business, as you mentioned, entrepreneurship. And you had this similar mentality. I've seen like really successful people, like they have the mentality of abundance, not scarcity, right? That you, Evan, you're looking at this like, hey, if I train someone that's going to be a great person in the industry, well, again, we're going back to this comment that there's quality jobs, not enough qualified people. So you have this abundance mentality instead of, scarcity mentality, which just shows like why someone would want to work with you and be attracted to your business, right? And, where does that confidence come from to know that, the brand you've built, who you are, and again, you could bring on another competitive person, but how, that rising tide is going to raise all ships.
Well, you just said it right there. I've heard you say it a bunch of times. About the rising tide raises all ships. I firmly believe that our competition is not the other quality builders. I love to network with guys like yourself that are here local. We may trade vendors and trade partners, and that's kind of what CBUSA is as well. With that group, and I just don't see that really as our competition. I think our competition is the guys that are coming in lowballing numbers, knowing good and well that they're never going to hit that number. And then in the end, they've got an unhappy client who says, "Oh, you shouldn't build a home. It's stressful. It's terrible." And it puts a bad taste in people's mouth for going through the process. And so, I believe that if you do right by your clients and you get up and you work hard and make good decisions every day, that, more work's going to come. And I don't worry about something that I can't control.
It's interesting. You say that, and eventually I'm going to have some guests here that are local in my market, and same thing. There's a group of builders that I network with that, are peers of mine that I greatly admire. And the funny thing is, like, probably similar to you, we network, we share good trades, we share, good suppliers we're working with and good experiences, but I haven't really competed against them, and they're pretty active on social media. So, but the reality is there's still enough opportunity, right, for good people. And I'm very similar to you with that CBUSA group. It's like a group of builders that are like-minded. And, if the day comes where I lose a job to one of them, at least I know that they're in good hands, and that's okay, right?
exactly. And I mean, I just had that happen recently. One builder we lost a job to, and then we won a job that he lost. And um, yeah, it happens, man. And I think, like you said, they're in good hands. It's business. That's going to happen. You're not going to win every deal, and as long as the clients, because I mean, gosh, you go through this process, and by the time you're putting your numbers out, or even if it's before you get numbers out to them, you know, you you build a strong relationship because I know you're like I am. You're going to be married to these folks for 2 years, 3 years. You're going to talk to them every day. Got to be somebody that you trust and that you're going to enjoy working with. And you build that relationship, and then maybe they do make a decision in a different direction, and you want to see them happy and successful. It's awful when you put in that work and then they do make a decision, and if you know that it's not going to be a successful, well, you think that it's not going to be a successful build for them. That's tough.
Well, it's interesting. And I want to talk to you because you jumped on the Matterport thing before me that I want to dive into. But before we do that, going back to QR code, because one thing I failed to ask you is, difficulty. If I'm listening and I'm like, okay, I want to be like Evan, and I want to implement the QR code. You touched on this briefly with the PDF version. I mean, how difficult is it to get that set up and then maintain and run?
Man, it's pretty simple. You can, just take your letterhead, and there's all sorts of free websites for QR codes. And, you copy a link from the website, you post it or paste it in the QR code creator, and then it'll pop up the image, and you just copy and paste it onto that PDF that, definitely do it on a letterhead where your logo is there, and then just save it as a template. And then each time you have an additional file or an update or something, again, you just delete that one, copy and paste the new one. And I'm sure you can get a lot more in depth with them as far as updating on their own and making it look more aesthetically pleasing, or like you said, even breaking the files down into more specific files. But it doesn't have to be super detailed and difficult. I would say just start out with whatever you can. I mean, any effort is going to be better than no effort, and then just refine it to what fits your process the best. And then, Brad,
now, Matterport, how did that come into play? Maybe walk through. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned the Matterport. I think that's where you and I got on this QR code conversation up in Boston, was on the Matterport scan. For those of y'all that don't know what Matterport is, if you see the real estate listings where you can click and walk through a home, that's what we're referring to. And historically, I would take my phone and I would just make a video and walk through the house, and then I'd save these videos and try and text them out to trades, and the file's too big, it won't send. And so one day I was just thinking, like, man, I could do this real estate scan, and obviously there's other guys like yourself that are doing it. But so we reached out to a local real estate photographer, and they came in, and we do it just before installation, so you can see all your wires, pipes, framing, and they come in and they do these scans, and then they send you the file. You can turn around and email that out to all your trades, your customer, if you do or don't want to. That could get tricky, but send it out to everybody, and they've got a great app on your phone where you can even pull measurements from it. And man, it's super valuable. And again, we put that in a QR code, and then your cabinet installer's on site, and he's wondering, hey, is that a stud or a waste pipe? Well, he can pull up the scan and know exactly what's there.
I love that you're doing this. And so, truth be told, I can't take the full credit. So I had Casey Cloward with Raycon, right, in Utah, and he had posted a video in Utah of doing his homes. And he's doing the Matterport. And as you mentioned, in real estate, it's pretty common that a home tour, and you saw this a lot through COVID too, where it really took off, where people couldn't go to like a formal open house in certain states and certain areas. And so you could do the full 3D tour as if you're there in person. I mean, of course, it's a little different because it's digital, but for the most part, you get it contextualizes not just like photo where we can't really understand the layout of the house, but through video, walking through. And what you showed me is the measurement side, which is super valuable. And we do a lot of ICF construction, right? Where it's concrete exterior walls, wood framed interior. And the measurement is super beneficial. And we found that now, through the connection of Casey and just in speaking with you that is doing as well, we love that the industry is going this way because, in fact, we're cost plus, and we put this as a line item. Our client is very aware. We send them the Matterport, and it's super valuable because now, as you mentioned, when cabinet guys are back or finished trades, they're able to go back, look at the Matterport. If drywall, which happens often, I have good drywallers, but they tend to miss things, as they're going through, they forget all the different boxes because they're complex built. So it just happens.
Yeah, we just had a client who decided to move some sconces in the master bath. They were going to be 4 sconces on the mirror wall of the master bath, and they decided that now that they were in the space, we really wanted the 2 outside sconces to be on the side walls. And so we were able to pull up the scan and then along with the measuring tool, pull up and see that, our blocking between studs, we traced that wire and saw that it was just above that blocking. We could measure up to where that blocking is. And then, what normally would have been probably 2 or 3 holes in the drywall, now we just made our 1 hole for the sconce, and there was nothing to patch or repair. And so, it just paid for itself right there on that specific job. But I feel like if looking back on many other jobs, you can see where this would be so valuable. I mean, like you mentioned, Brad, if the drywall guys miss a receptacle and, your electricians are trying to tone it to find it, gosh, you pull it up, you measure it, and there it is.
For those of you that have listened to the podcast, you know how big of a fan we are of Build-A-Trend and that we have used this software for the last 4 years. And many of the guests that we brought on the podcast are also Build-A-Trend users. And in this day and age, with as busy as all of us are in construction, as complicated as it is with escalation pricing, lead times, tracking, organization, all of us need a good project management software to help simplify and organize our business. And there are a couple features that we love a ton about Build-A-Trend. And one is the owner portal. The other is the daily logs. And these are features that we use daily, right? Half of my clients are out of state. And as an owner, it is so imperative how we communicate with our clients, with our team, with our customers. And through Build-A-Trend, this allows us that quick connection. They can check at any time. We can communicate with them. We're up to date. This has actually helped us win jobs, win projects because of that organization, especially at pre-construction. And Build-A-Trend also offers a ton of service on the back end, training and understanding and workshops, to help us use our software effectively. They also have the podcast, The Building Code. To learn more, head to buildertrend.com/AFT to get a 60-day money-back guarantee on your Build-A-Trend account. That's 60 days to make sure you love this product with no pressure, and I know you will. This episode is brought to you by Pella Windows. When it comes to building homes at AFT, almost every project has Pella Windows. And they've been just an incredible partner of ours. And locally, Sammy and Adam, they are not only amazing business partners behind us, but they are super close friends. And I speak on the podcast all the time about the importance of relationships, right? Relationships with our customers, with our vendors, with our suppliers, because at the end of the day, I'm only as good as those that help our brand and assist us in our projects to take it from the ground up all the way to completion. And if we didn't have partners such as Pella, there's no way we'd be who we are today. Over the years, we've built this amazing relationship. When we call them or email them, they respond. They're quick. Their company culture, their integrity, their honesty, they are always there to do what's right for us and the customer. They can do anything from small replacement projects to large custom homes and even multi-million-dollar commercial projects. And also, when you think about their product line, they can do ultra-contemporary, historical preservation, and large traditional projects. So for anyone, any scale, any size, they're the ones to call. They're here local. They have an amazing Instagram. Make sure and give them a follow to see what they're doing. So if you need windows and doors, give Sammy and Adam a call. We stand behind Pella. We love what they do, their culture, their brand, and especially their quality. And if you want to learn more about Pella Windows, check our show notes. We'll have everything tagged there so you can give them a follow and have their contact information to reach out. And let me ask this just on the operations side. Is everything you build built to suit, or do you do any specs? The reason I ask is because I've had a lot of people that follow us through social media, and they're always like, Brad, can you do the final tour, or final video? And I haven't. I mean, on YouTube, I'll do some final tours because the client's okay. But as far as like a full detailed Matterport showing everything, I don't, because everything's built to suit. However, I will do, like you at 4-way before we drywall and send it to the client so they have a copy. How often are you showcasing the final product, or is it just, at frame stage?
I haven't done it at the final product. thinking about doing it on a couple. Normally we try and get a photographer in. I mean, right now with the delays on products, your homeowners are beating on the door trying to get in right when you get CO. So then, you may not have time to get that photographer in there. But, we normally try and get a photographer in for some detailed shots and, a little bit more wide frame. So I think the Matterport, it would be cool at that point. For us, it's not quite as valuable as some of the up close detailed shots that a skilled photographer does. But man, it's just such cool technology. For us, it's not incredibly expensive at all. It's been extremely valuable on the front end.
So going back to the management side, you mentioned this earlier that part of the reason that you had looked at hiring people was to start focusing on the business. Without going like, we don't want to air all over dirty laundry, right? Because I'm sure I have plenty too of mistakes and issues as we're trying to fix, just so many things as operation. It's just construction's complicated, management's complicated, our industry and supply chain and labor force. I mean, we have a lot of variables all of us are dealing with that really are just hard to put our arms around. Were there some things that you're looking at that, hey, I'm doing great as a sole proprietor, building my business, but here's some key areas I want to focus on, and by hiring someone, I can now focus on these to help, refine my process at, CroweBuilt Homes?
I would say it's definitely the accounting side for the business. Now, I've got a great process of keeping up with the accounting for each build. I mean, for the most part, everything is open book. We send our clients reports that they see every single penny where it's going. But knowing your numbers as far as your markup and your margins and all of your overhead and being prepared when the tax man comes knocking, learning all of that. That's the tricky part, man. You could be the best tile installer in the country, but that doesn't mean that you know how to run a business. And I don't want to say that building the homes are easy, but at this point, building the home is the easier part, but managing the client and making sure that you're managing payroll and all the many expenses of running a business, that's the part that I've really had to put more time into and needed a little less time on site doing the tasks that I don't necessarily need to be doing.
So what do you use for accounting software, if you don't mind me asking?
We're using QuickBooks.
And then when you're using QuickBooks, and every market's different, when you're billing, are you billing multiple times a month, once a month? I mean, how are you keeping, the draws consistent, with your clientele?
Sometimes it's multiple times a month. It kind of varies from the client. Some of our clients are cash based, and they may just give us bigger sums less often. That way they're not dealing with it. And, again, we're totally open with exactly, what's been spent, what their balance is. It's in our contract, our payment terms. So if we incur a lot of expenses within 2 weeks, I mean, maybe it's, you're finishing up all your mechanicals as well as all your windows and doors are going in, you're getting a lot of bills quickly. So, we'll send that account report over, showing what's due. And, honestly, I don't care if it comes from the bank or if you dig a mason jar in the backyard. It's our responsibility to build the home, but it's not, necessarily our responsibility to be the bank for you and to fund that build. So, we just try and stay as transparent as we can and send reports over as needed.
Do you ever struggle with when there's banks involved? And maybe I'll apply to like Arizona. A lot of them are pretty strict that they only allow a certain amount of draws, or they charge the client per draw after that. Or, I've even worked with some banks here in Phoenix that they have a rule that they can only do one draw every 30 days. So it doesn't matter if you're trying to expedite it. How do you circumvent or work around with the different banks, just the complexity that angle brings into the business?
Man, that's tough. It's extremely hard. And that's where, setting the expectations up front with our client is super important. It's something that we learn on every single build. You learn something new. You're always adding something to a checklist here or there. But, we've worked with a bank once that told us, hey, you get 6 inspections, meaning 6 draws, and that's it. And, you got a 12-month
And you're like,
build.
how am I supposed to build a house? Yeah. Yeah. If you're building a house over 12 or 18 months and you have 6 draws, like how are you supposed to make that work?
Right. And they didn't they didn't do a great job of communicating that with us prior to the closing of that loan. And we can't necessarily decide who our clients are getting their loan with. You know, um, after that one, I definitely learned on how to manage that process better, because that was a headache. It's not that the client um, didn't have some available funding, but I mean, Brad, as you know, all these loans are heavy on the back end. So you may have $100,000 in framing, and the bank's going to give you 75. And something's got to make up that gap. And so we're just very upfront with our clients on how that process works, making sure that the bank informs them well on their process. And for the most part, um, they're all letting us do as many inspections as needed, and just charging an additional fee for each one, which is pretty minimal. I think it's probably in between $100 and $200 depending on what bank it is.
Right. And I think most banks are somewhat favorable to that, if there's additional draws, because there's more paperwork for them and they have to accrue for that manpower, right? Or time for the bank side to process it all. Going back to that, if you don't mind me asking, especially, I think most of us, I can relate to that example, because in my business, there's things you just don't know what you don't know as a business owner, right? And running a new company. And so you have these, I don't want to call them mistakes, but you have these issues that come up. And you're like, well, mental note, right? I'm putting this in my SOP and my operating procedures.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that I may not be the one finding the bank. I may refer my client, but at the end of the day, before they sign those banking docs, I'm going to read through them, which we do now, same as you. And case in point, we had one just recently that they were about to sign and they had 6 draws. I'm like, guys, how am I supposed to build this house when there's going to be a 1.5 year, 18-month build and you're giving me 6 draws? So being that you're fixing that now, but going back to that time, how did you address that billing wise? I mean, just the complexity of working through a project where you only have 6 draws.
I don't know that we addressed it the best way, but we were just
very
the
honesty. Open. It's so true.
Well, I mean, everybody makes mistakes. It's just that some of our mistakes seem to be a little bigger because of the price of the jobs. But we're just very open with our clients, and they were kind of blindsided, and they knew. They were like, "Gosh, how can you do that?" And so they moved some money around, because in the end, our contract states that they are responsible for the funding. Yes, most people do have a construction loan, but that's at the benefit of the client. And because again, we can't control exactly who they're funded with. I guess we could say no, but that's not always the case. So that client kind of worked some things around to free up a little bit of money, and we talked to a couple different vendors and made sure that they knew, hey, we've got a good track record, and this is what the situation is. We put some money out of our pocket, but I mean, gosh, when you're working with some of these numbers, it's just not feasible. If you've got 4 or 5 homes going and each one of them is $100,000 in the hole, I mean, you're not going to have nobody wants to have $500,000 out of their own money that is out there for clients. So and again, that's not what we're agreeing to when we agreed to build the home. So it's tricky. We're learning every build, like you said, Brad. I mean, especially with the changing environment right now. I mean, one thing that we're experiencing is just be very open with the lender. We're having to order light fixtures and different finished materials extremely early because we don't know when they're coming in. And as long as we're providing invoices, most of the banks are releasing more money. In general, for those of y'all that don't know, they're not going to release any funding until that product is installed, not just on site, but installed. And if we're having to order lights 8 months before they're going to be installed, somebody's got to pony up and pay for that. And the bank understands. They want the house to be finished. It does the bank no good to have incomplete home, and they also understand that prices are fluctuating all the time. So especially the local banks, but most of the banks that we've worked with our clients have been very good about releasing some funding early.
It's interesting. I mean, you mentioned the comment that in your contract, you specify that the client is responsible for the funding. I haven't read my contract in a while, so it's going to make me want to go back after this podcast now and go read my contract and see what I have in there for that, that verbiage. And maybe I'll ping you after. But going back to it, how do you handle options? And I'll speak how I do it, So for like options upgrades, this is one that's always tough, right? Because whether the client's cash or whether the client is with the bank, a lot of times the reality is we have everything decided before we break ground, but the clients make a lot of changes. I mean, they just do because they may travel and see something or have a new idea. And I'm always clear with them in the beginning that, hey, we have our contract that just say it's $100,000, right? For the build. And any change orders you do, so if you're doing change order 1, 2, 3, and one's $5,000 and one's $7,000, like we have them pay 100% cash up front. So when they sign and execute the change order, even if we're at frame stage and it may be like a tile upgrade, right? They're funding that check in advance. And what that's done, that's, there has to be some trust from the client side that we're going to perform. But for the most part, it allows us the cash flow. And then, of course, I don't have to worry to get to the end of the project and the client's like, I don't have the funds, or, I'm in a different position financially, or my company, or, the whatever with the bank. Like everything's covered. I know that the bank's clear on what they're funding. And then I have the nest egg, if you will, the escrow account for the option money that they paid. I mean, how are you working through upgrades and options throughout the build?
So Brad, that's an area that we definitely have to improve. And I love the process that you speak of that y'all do. We normally don't have all selections done up front. I would say that probably most of your guests are on my side of the fence there. I don't know how you can do that, and that's super impressive that you do. But you just got to communicate well and make sure that they understand, hey, this is what we budgeted for, and this is where we think we're coming in. The other part that's really hard is a lot of those decisions being made on site while the trade is there, and they want to get them put in right then. And so for the time to get that change order put together, sent over, signed off, and that money paid, that's how long is that delay? And now that trade has left, maybe on another job, and getting them back to execute that change order, that can be tricky. So that's something that we're refining on every project, because there have been times where clients have made changes, and we get there and we say, okay, well, here's the invoice for that change order. This is where it came out, and then oh well, I don't have that money right now, and that gets a little difficult. But when you stop the work on site because it's not being funded as it was agreed to in the contract, they tend to change tune. It's not that we want to do that, but if you're in the hole, if you owe us a good chunk of money, and we can't continue to incur costs on site if you're not settling up on your end.
I totally agree. And another tough thing, I don't know how often you've dealt with this, but we intentionally have clients that come in and are pushing retention, right? And whether it's the client that has done commercial projects and they're familiar with that, or whether their lawyers, push it on them as they go to the contract, hey, we need to have retention. And this is something I've always struggled with, because going back to your example, so I do commercial and residential, right? And lately it's been a lot more heavy-sided on the residential side, but early on we did a lot of commercial. And retention is very common, but what's different about commercial is, we're doing projects that could be doing a restaurant or a brewery or a new build, and these are quick builds, right? You're 4, 6, 7, maybe 8 months. I mean, rarely are you doing multi-year commercial unless it's a massive development, right? But at the level I'm doing as a small builder, these are quick projects. And so retention's key, because it protects, as you're going through the build, it protects the developer. Also, you're working with firms that are a lot bigger, like the mechanical company I'm hiring. I mean, they may have 250 employees, whereas residential, my mechanical guy may have like 6, right? It's a totally different operation. So going back to you, where early on in my career, going back to the 6 draw thing, I'm like, oh yeah, retention, early on, that's no big deal. And then it absolutely just critically hurt the project and us too, because we were so far behind with retention. And, especially in a 2-year build, concrete guys waiting for his retention that in our contract wasn't until the build was done, and you're like 24 months. So getting trades to bid it, getting a supplier base was really difficult. And now I've pushed back on that. I go to clients and I'm like, hey, I can't have retention. These are small groups. Keep in mind, we're cost plus. We're billing in arrears anyways. We're billing every 30 days. You're inspecting the work. You're going to make sure it's done. So that check's already happening. And now you're going to get a better bidding base because people are going to participate because there's no retention. And, it's a 2-year build. It's not, so without going into all explanation, I have plenty of arsenal, right? Plenty of ammo now to explain and the client through. And fortunately, we haven't had retention in a while. Do you ever have clients that push on that?
No, actually, I don't think I've had any push on retention up front. We make it very clear on who our trade partners are, what kind of businesses they run, and what kind of business we run. I think you and I both can stand by our track record and explain that to our clients that, hey, we wouldn't be running this successful business or have been in business for X number of years if we weren't doing things on the up and up. And a lot of the banks are going to hold, say, 5 or 10% at the end until they get the CO, which that form of retention sometimes may be difficult if the municipality is holding your CO for whatever reason may be. We just had a pretty difficult one that were, just some really ticky-tack items that, we had back orders and they were holding our CO for a couple of things. And, that extended out the amount of time that we had money out. And, that's where you go back to your client and say, hey, this is what we agreed to contractually. And we got to make something work. And, we're flexible, probably more flexible than we should be, probably, to a fault. But I think every situation is a little bit different. And luckily, we haven't had anybody want to hold retention up front during the build. And I don't see that as something we would necessarily agree to, but I guess it depends on the project and the circumstance.
Yeah, don't agree to it. just my advice. It's tough.
Right.
And the thing is, we can still do a great job. And this goes back to the retention thing because the always sticking point is, okay, there's deposits and you're billing. And then, how do you figure out the punch list at the end? And I've been very adamant, especially early on, very similar to commercial. If I'm building for you, Evan, and you're like, okay, Brad, well, I'm holding your last payment. Maybe it's $200,000. It could be a big number. And you have some paint touch up here, missing a piece of cabinet hardware here. My pool finish isn't done because, the pool guys are behind and materials behind. So what we do is assign a value, right? So instead of retention, exactly. It's like, okay, Evan, well, let's assign a value. If I disappear and it costs you $2,000 to finish this, all the paint touch-ups in the house, let's put a value of $5,000. So you're beyond protected. Mm. And then you create this value. Okay, maybe you have $40,000 that were held back. You can fund me the $160,000, keep the meter going, right? Keep the progress going, keep the warranty intact. And then as we check the list off, then you fund each of those items. And so that's been another way where the client has a little bit of protection, if you will. We have some skin in the game, and it's just it's made the punch list a lot more amicable in the end.
Right. I think if you're reasonable and you both builder and client, put yourself in the other person's shoes, then that's what we tend to do and tends to work best. But yeah, if you have two little ticky tack punch list items, and somebody's wanting to hold 6 figures, that makes it a little difficult.
Yeah, fortunately I had, and this is years back, I had one client's final payment. It's a big amount. It was 6 figures, and we were back ordered on some light fixtures that were, like $500 a piece. And it was an option. It was an add-on that they had added anyways. But, and that was before I was collecting options up front. But bottom line is we came to value and they funded it. Going back to, your process, Evan, especially working through bidding and estimating, how are you bridging the gap of when selections aren't done? Are you creating allowances? How are you having the conversation of plugging in dollars for costs so the client can get banking or funding, or at least have a good idea of what the project will cost, since not everything's decided?
Yeah. So, we start with a new construction questionnaire that we'll send out to potential clients before we even start to put a number to things. And, it's got questions regarding to what they want for, finishes and envelope and windows and just everything on how we're going to construct the home. And when we put the estimate together, for the most part, a lot of those selections aren't done at that point. And so based off of that questionnaire and conversation and inspiration pictures we get them to send, we can build our allowances off of that. If we do have exact selections, that's great. But in all reality, right now, that number's still going to change by the time you get to installing that product. So, we put allowances in. We make it very clear with our clients like what fits within this allowance, um, and we build off of that. Brad, I'm sure you see it that I think Instagram and Pinterest and all these different means of clients being able to get inspiration they're great in one aspect, but in the other, you may have a client with a $2 million budget and they're sending you details from a $10 million home. And, that's what every one of their inspiration pictures is. And, everything adds up. And that's why I love the cost plus method and just being totally transparent and letting them see every single number. That way, if they see that bottom line and they think, oh my gosh, it's such a big number, but then they see, the 100 line items that make up that estimate, and you point and say, hey, which one of these do you think is out of line? And normally the answer is no, they all look good. So, it's just being open and transparent, setting those allowances to where, design changes throughout the build. The house gets framed and the windows go in and they see the lighting and they decide on, a different tile. And, so that's where we can say, hey, this is what we allowed and this is what that tile is going to cost. It's, going to be X number of dollars more, and just trying to be as transparent as possible and keeping that communication open.
I can't think, all sarcasm here, of a time a client's ever had champagne taste on a beer budget. It's never happened, right?
No,
I just laugh because it's just, all of us do that. But the reality is it's like pricing's changed and market's changed. We see inspiration, but we don't, even some of the pre-construction team, they don't understand the full cost of things. So you go on and you're like, whoa, this came back higher than expected. What's interesting, you mentioned that you send out this new question or new construction questionnaire to your clients. Without going into specifics on that, the purpose of it, are you managing the design process, from finishes to selections to architecture and drafting? Are you outsourcing that? How does that play a role? Because what's interesting, you did mention that you're going to ask them not just like finishes but also construction types. So could be they maybe want an ICF house and you're going to have to know that for budget as opposed to wood frame. And so, the purpose of that construction contract, it sounds like a lot of clients are probably going to you first, through business development.
Right. So I guess it's kind of twofold. I would say most of our clients have plans before they reach out to us. I do like that in one aspect, but I also like to be a part of that process with the architect. And then it's probably 50-50 whether they have a designer in place or not. But yeah, I mean, it helps kind of, even if they have a designer, Brad, we get stuck in the middle. They've hired their architect because they love the vision of that architect and the product that architect puts out. And then they've hired us for kind of the same reason, but they normally give us an investment constraint. And so we're kind of stuck in the middle of, hey, I've got to honor this architect and designer's vision, but I've also got to honor my client's investment constraint. And so, it kind of helps to have them tell me some of the things that they're looking for separate from what the designer says they want, because they may not always be the same, cost wise. And to be blunt, man, another question on that questionnaire is what's your budget? What kind of investment are you willing to make? That's something that a lot of people don't want to divulge up front. And that kind of throws a red flag for me on the whole trust process, because, you've got to trust me throughout this process. And if you're not going to be honest up front with what your budget is, then, this may not work great. But, we get a lot of people that reach out, as I'm sure you do, that some are extremely realistic and their understanding of costs, and some are not. And, it takes a lot of time to put an accurate estimate together to then find out that, we're on two totally different pages as far as the investment they want to make in the home. So it kind of heads that off. And then, like you said, I mean, we definitely have standards that we're going to build to, um, with our structure and our envelope. But some clients may want even more as you speak to ICF or whatever it may be, and that just gives them an opportunity to provide us with as much information as they can, for us to be able to just be as accurate as possible from the beginning.
It's funny you say that because as you're speaking to that, we're totally on the same page, right? That, for this to be a successful project, I can't have this cat and mouse game. Like if I understand what the budget is, now we can make sure we're designing to that and building to that. The owner can also hold you accountable, Evan, right? To make sure that you're going to be, hopefully reasonably close to that budget. But I think of it this way, and this is where, as you keep saying the word trust, which is very important, and credibility and, our reputation is super key on what we're delivering. Because if I were to go purchase a vehicle and I'm sitting there with this car agent, well, what's your budget, right, to buy a car? A lot of us are kind of leery on sharing that because who knows the funny business with like behind the scenes markup or, financing or, whatever's happening, right? It's just kind of this weird dichotomy. And most of us, innately are maybe mistrusting, or we're like, well, if I tell you my number, you're just going to bill to it. I'm not really getting any benefit, right? But if we can show and build this reputation, whether it's through social media and whether it's through our interactions and history and historical data and all this stuff, ideally the client's coming to us because, hey, Evan, you're a cost plus builder. I'm a cost plus builder. We're super transparent. We're going to hire good people. Like we're in this. And if we can build this rapport with the client, then they're going to be more prone to give us that number. And then now that's the true success. If we know the number, we can build together with the whole design team.
Right. I mean, I think it saves a lot of time and stress and headache from everybody if I explain that, hey man, we're open book. It's all going to be right here in front of you. There's not any funny business. There's no hidden numbers. If you're upfront with me on what you're willing to invest in this home, then let's design and build to that. That's where, again, it's just trust, man. Just trust us. We've built a good reputation, and when you're honest with us, and we can design and build to that, because we get put in a tight spot, Brad. If we put allowances high enough to where nothing is over budget, well, then our bottom line may be out of their budget. But if we put our allowances extremely close and a little too low, and okay, this number looks good, so we're going to win this job, and then everything comes in a little bit over budget, you're going to have an unhappy client. So it's tricky, man. I'm not saying we nail it every time. We try. I can honestly say that we have never gone in and priced a home just trying to win that home. But there are times when you definitely have to consider, hey, we've got to put a little bit lower allowance than what they're wanting, to be able to stay within the investment constraints that they're wanting to make.
And what's interesting, you mentioned this to me, I know, just preface, is that, again, going back to the trust thing, you had spoken about how CBUSA allowed you to kind of forecast lumber. So even though you're cost plus, you're saving the money, the client money. Talk about that example of doing what's best by the client. And in the long run, right, it's that short-term gain for the client that's going to be the long-term win for the project.
Right. I mean, our jobs are super stressful. Everything in life is stressful right now. So when I lay down at night, if I can close my eyes and tell myself, did I make the best decision for my clients with the knowledge I have today? And if that answer is yes, then you know what, I'll sleep pretty good at night. But I could not lay down and sleep if I knew that I made a decision that wasn't in my client's best interest. So, with CBUSA, we've got our lumber buys that give us extreme advantage over other builders on our pricing and the just the knowledge that's passed down from the different analysts and buyers within the group nationally. And we've got a client we're working with now that we'd finished their foundation. We're about to get their lumber dropped, and we knew that lumber was coming down on our next true up the following month. And so we went to the clients and said, hey guys, I think that we can save, maybe 20 grand if we hold off 2 weeks on framing. And they agreed, and it turned out to be closer to like 35,000. which was unfortunately still over budget from the time we signed the contract because lumber had gone up so fast. But if we didn't communicate with them and we didn't lean on our partners at CBUSA, that's 35,000 real dollars that they would have spent for the exact same material 2 weeks earlier. So, that's where the transparency and just looking out for your client is extremely important.
I love that, Evan. I mean, what a perfect way to like close the conversation is, by doing best for your client, going to bed at night, just understanding that it's going to build that trust rapport that's going to help these projects be successful from the beginning. So outside of building, which takes up, I know, a lot of your life, because you're texting me on the weekend that you're out on the tractor and out working, what do you do for fun?
So, spending time with the family. I've got 2 young kids and awesome wife and, cat and a dog, and we live on 5 acres. And so we spend a lot of time outside. Love the outdoors. If I can get away, it's going to be probably hunting and fishing. But that's been on the back burner with the kids. Man, just watching them grow up and spending time with them. There's not much that beats that.
I love that. Awesome. Well, it shows just in your personality and who you are. I mean, just those priorities. So, what's upcoming and exciting?
Man, we've got some good projects upcoming. Some here local that they're going to have some really great features and just phenomenal clients. We've got a little feature coming in Southern Living magazine in November, and we're
awesome.
just gonna keep pushing forward, man. Trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our clients, and hopefully I can step. What do they say? Work on your business, not in your business. So, got to focus on that a little bit.
I think we're all trying to do that. So, where can our listeners find you?
Y'all can find us on Instagram at CroweBuilt Homes, Facebook, and on Southern Living's website, and the upcoming issue in November.
Well, thanks for joining us, Evan. It's been a pleasure. Really appreciate all the insight.
Thanks, Brad. It's been great getting to know you here recently, and just appreciate everything you're doing.
So thank you all for tuning into the podcast today. And just as a recap, if you check the show notes, they're just going to have all the links for the topics that we discuss. And also one of our favorite features now is the chapters that go through the conversation. So if there's certain topics you want to revisit or listen to, they're outlined by the time that we discuss those. And again, we can't thank you enough for all of your support. Please make sure and download our podcast, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you download your podcast.